This is another episode of Christopher Reads the Help Files. In this one, it's projects, data shortcut projects. Topics in this section include about data shortcuts. This section explains the concepts and procedures for managing data shortcuts. And then we have all the other topics. About the data shortcuts editor. Use the data shortcuts editor for bulk operations on data shortcuts. About data shortcuts. This section explains the concepts and procedures for managing data shortcuts. Tutorial, using data shortcuts. Data shortcut best practices. Using data shortcuts involves two main processes. Create data shortcuts from their source drawings. Create data references in consumer drawings to source objects in source drawings. Data shortcuts can be used for surfaces, alignments, profiles, sample line groups, corridors, pipe networks, pressure networks, and view frame groups. When you create a data shortcut for a profile or a sample line group, a data shortcut to the parent alignment is also created. When you create a data shortcut for a corridor that uses alignments and profiles for its baselines, data shortcuts are automatically created for those baselines. If corridor baselines are comprised of feature lines, shortcuts are not created independently for those feature lines. But when the corridor shortcuts is referenced into a drawing, the baselines are treated as alignments and profiles. For more information, see to create corridor references. Relationship between shortcuts and data references. A data shortcut provides a direct path to the location of shareable source object. In a single operation, you can create data shortcuts for multiple objects in a source drawing. The data shortcut is used only for the creation of data references. Data reference is a read-only copy of a source object inserted into another drawing, often called a consumer drawing. From the Prospector tab, you can select a shortcut for an object and create a reference to that object in the active drawing. The data reference maintains an active link to the source object in the source drawing without relying on the data shortcut. Note, the term project is used here for ease of reference and to explain a sample data structure. Formal projects and particular folder structures are not required with data shortcuts and references, but some form of structure usually helps to keep related data organized. On the Toolspace Prospector tab, the Data Shortcuts node displays the path to the active project, where data shortcuts are stored. These data shortcuts can be created from any drawing associated with the active project. The figure shows how the Data Shortcuts node appears if the active project is ARC. Shortcut folders on the Prospector tree for sample project ARC. If you change the active project, the new project name appears on the Data Shortcuts node, and the subfolders contain only the shortcuts in the new active project. A particular consumer drawing can contain data references from multiple projects. Data reference attributes. The reference object has read-only geometry, but the user can apply local object style, apply custom annotation, do limited analysis, and access the source object's properties. The reference object takes up less file space when the consumer drawing is saved. If the source object is edited, the synchronization process ensures that the changes are reflected in the reference object. Synchronization occurs when the consumer drawing is opened and can also be done manually by the user. You can promote a data reference to an independent object that can be edited after promotion is no longer updated from its original source object. Persistence of data reference geometry in drawings. Persistence of reference geometry for objects except surfaces. In AutoCAD Civil 3D 2014, the behavior data references for object types except for surfaces was changed. When you insert a reference to a data shortcut into a drawing, then you save and close the drawing, the object geometry is saved in the drawing. When you reopen the drawing that contains the reference is only validated and synchronized if the source object has changed. This behavior makes it easier to share drawings which contain references with others because the referenced objects are still visible, even if the source drawings are not available. And because synchronization only occurs if the source object is changed. An object in a drawing that relies on a data reference, such as a corridor which contains an alignment that is a reference, is only marked out of date when an actual change to the data has occurred. This makes it really hard for users to figure out if they're using the correct data, because sometimes you have a drawing and then you create a copy of that drawing and then delete the old drawing, and then you make changes in the new drawing. And Civil 3D may not be able to find that new drawing, but it still looks like the alignment is in there. And then you're like 3 weeks down the road and you're like, why doesn't it match this drawing? And it's because it hasn't updated it and you haven't paid attention to notice that the alignment hasn't been changed. But I guess it works. Persistence of reference geometry for surfaces. In AutoCAD Civil 3D 2017, the ability to save the geometry of reference surfaces in the drawing was added. A setting in the Create Surface Reference command setting is available that you can use to specify whether you want this behavior or not. If you choose to save the geometry of a reference surface in the drawing that contains the reference will become larger, but will open more quickly unless the source surface is changed. For more information, see to work with surface references. And so we'll have to check that value. So I'm going to pause this video real quick. Okay, so to work with data shortcut project folders. This section explains how to organize the data for a new project, including some configuration options to consider. To set a new working folder, set a new working folder as the location to store data shortcut projects. The default working folder for data shortcuts project is C users public documents Autodesk Civil 3D projects. The default working folder is also used for Autodesk Vault projects and local non-Vault survey projects. If you work with Autodesk Vault, local survey, and data shortcuts projects, you should have separate working folders for each project type for ease of management. 1. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, right-click Data Shortcuts, Set Working Folder. 2. Navigate to the desired folder and select it. So you just right-click and Set Working Folder, which is kind of a pain, and I guess I'll use that one there. To create a new template for data shortcut projects. Create a new template if the sample template is not suitable. To create your own project template, copy the default template _sample project and save it with a new name. To maintain the automatic storage of new data shortcut XML files, do not change the _shortcut folder and its subfolders. Your new project template appears in the list of templates when you create a new data shortcuts project folder. 1. Navigate to folder C users public documents Autodesk Civil 3D project templates. And so there's the sample project and all the subfolders. Two, copy the _sample project, then paste it in the same location and rename it. This is your new template. Open your new template and review the structure of folders and subfolders. Do not change the top level folder _shortcuts or any folders inside of it, but feel free to change the names of other folders and their hierarchical structure. To create a new data shortcut folder, create a new folder for storing a set of related project drawings and data shortcuts. Create a folder name, which should reflect the project name, and specify whether to use a project template to organize your data. The figures show the structure created by the default project template. Shortcut project template, the prospector tree icons. Using a project template is a best practice that you will appreciate as your collection of projects and data expands. 1. In Toolspace on the Prospector tab, right-click Data Shortcuts and choose New Data Shortcuts folder. That wasn't right, was it? So it's New Data Shortcuts project folder. New Data Shortcuts. So they're missing the word projects. Two, in the New Data Shortcuts Project Folder dialog box, specify a name and optionally a text description of the project folder. 3. Optionally select Use Project Template, browse to another location for the Project Template folder, and click the name of a project template. 4. Click OK. The new project folder is created in the working folder. So you right-click and New, and then you can give it a name. And then it creates it. To set the Data Shortcuts project folder, specify the project path for the data shortcuts. The path to the current Data Shortcuts folder, also known as the project folder, is specified on the Data Shortcuts node in Toolspace on the Prospector tab. The project folder typically contains both the data shortcuts and the source objects for data references. Data references that you create in the active drawing come from the active project folder. Setting or changing the Data Shortcuts folder reloads the shortcuts into all drawings in that folder. You can reload the shortcuts to apply changes made to the Data Shortcuts editor window. Note, you can override the Data Shortcuts working folder by creating a Windows environment variable named dssysvar. This may be useful in situations where multiple users share a project and the project directory is different locations on each user's machines. 1. In Toolspace on the Prospector tab, right-click Data Shortcuts and click Set Data Shortcuts folder. In the Set Data Shortcuts dialog box, click the name of the project you want to work with. 3. Check that the new project path is displayed on the Data Shortcuts node on the Prospector tab. And it is. To define the project search paths. When a drawing is opened, data shortcuts to projects are resolved based on project information stored in the current user's, based on Windows login, shortcut folders XML file, which contains working folders for the project. This file should not be edited manually as it is maintained by the system. If the project is not found in this file, additional search paths can be provided in the project file search path defined on the Files tab of the Options dialog box. This may be useful in situations where multiple users on different machines want to share data across a network. In this case, shortcut projects can be placed on a server location and search paths defined on each client machine to point to that location. That just sounds like a deployment nightmare. So it looks like you go to Options down here, and then is that under project file search path? So there it is. So it looks like you can add them there. Select the project file search path and click Add. Select the newly added project and click Add. So you do Add. ASDF, then Add, and then I guess you can browse to a folder, and then hit Open. And so it's going to look for that file folder. But I'm not using the UNC format. And then click OK. Does that really explain it though? So I'll go ahead. Not sure on the search order and how it will affect performance if I have thousands of projects. To work with data shortcuts. Tutorial exercise, creating data shortcuts. To create data shortcuts from the active drawing. Data shortcuts are stored in the underscore shortcuts folder for the active project and are used to create data references to the source objects in other drawings. Each data shortcut is stored in a separate XML file. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, right-click, Data Shortcuts, Create Data Shortcuts. So it's right there. In the Create Data Shortcuts dialog box, select any objects to be referenced in other drawings, and then click OK. Now you can create references to the data shortcuts in other drawings. Note, when you create a data shortcut for a corridor that uses alignments and profiles for its baselines, data shortcuts are automatically created for those baselines. If corridor baselines are comprised of feature lines, shortcuts are not created independently for those feature lines. But when the corridor shortcut is referenced into a drawing, the baselines are treated as alignments profiles. For more information, see to create corridor references. It's going to be a nightmare. Programming for it, because you're going to have feature lines. Is it a feature line baseline, and then when you data references, is then going to turn into an alignment and profile one? Just a can of worms, just because they didn't want to data shortcut feature lines. So I guess it's really not a project. It's just crap. When you create a data shortcut for a profile or a sample line group, a data shortcut for the parent alignment is also created. When you create a data shortcut for a sample line group, data shortcuts to the sampled sources are not automatically created. However, if an object is sampled source for a sample line group, that information is shown in the status column in the Create Data Shortcuts dialog box. For more information, see about sample line group data shortcuts and references. Note, the system will not allow you to create multiple shortcuts for a given object or to create a data shortcut to a reference from another drawing. To create folders for data shortcuts. You can create folders for organizing data shortcuts. In addition, when you create data shortcuts from objects that are stored in subfolders, the subfolder structure is replicated in the Data Shortcuts project folder. Note, you can also create new folders for data shortcuts in the Data Shortcut Manager dialog box. 1. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, expand the Data Shortcuts collection. Right-click on an object collection or an existing folder and click Create Folder. So you just come in here and Create Folder. In the Create New Folder dialog box, enter the name for the new folder and click OK. Now you can drag and drop existing data shortcuts or existing folders into the new folder. Note, if you attempt to delete a folder that contains data shortcuts, a task dialog box is displayed with options to move the objects to the parent folder, to delete the objects, or to cancel the command. To associate a data shortcut project with the current drawing. Make a data shortcut project the default for the current drawing. Use this procedure explicitly creates an association. If the current drawing is not associated with a project and a data reference is inserted, an association is created implicitly. Open the drawing for which you want to set the default data shortcuts project folder. or project. 2. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, right-click Data Shortcuts and click Associate Project to Current Drawing. Note: to remove the associated project, set the Select Project drop-down to None. Click OK. The project becomes the default data shortcut project for the drawing and appears under the Drawings Data Shortcuts node in the Prospector. To associate a data shortcut project with multiple drawings, associate data projects with all drawings in a folder. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, right-click Data Shortcuts and click Associate Project to Multiple Drawings. 2. In the Associate Project to Multiple Drawings box, select the project to associate in the Select Project dropdown. Note: to remove the associated project, set the Select Project dropdown to None. Click OK. In the Select a Folder Containing the Drawings dialog box, navigate to the folder on the file system that contains the drawings to associate with the project. 4. Click Select a Folder. The project is associated with all the drawings contained in the folder and appears in each drawing's data shortcuts tree in the Prospector. To remove a data shortcut, remove a data shortcut to make it unavailable for future data references. You can remove a data shortcut from the Data Shortcuts collection in the Toolspace on the Prospector tab. Doing this does not remove any data references to the source object that exists in the drawings, but it prevents anyone from creating more references to the object. 1. In Toolspace on the Prospector tab, expand the Data Shortcuts collection to find the shortcut that you want to remove. 2. Right-click on the object and click Remove. So if we right-click and remove. To control access to the Data Shortcuts node, control access to the use of data shortcuts. You can remove the Data Shortcuts node from the Prospector tab of Toolspace. This can be useful if you want to prevent the use of data shortcuts. Use the Shortcut Node command to either hide or disable or show enable the Data Shortcuts node. 1. On the command line, enter Shortcut Node. Set the value to 0. They're gone. How do I bring it back? So 1 brings back. That's weird. To validate data shortcuts. Data shortcuts can become invalid if changes occur to the names or location of drawings or referenced objects. When a data shortcut reference is broken, the exclamation icon is displayed next to the invalid data reference in Toolspace on the Prospector tab. Validation reloads the data references in the drawing paths if the drawing paths have not changed. Otherwise, you must repair broken references. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, right-click Data Shortcuts, Validate Data Shortcuts. The system checks the data shortcut references. If any references are broken, the event viewer opens and displays the details that you can use to fix the drawing. To manage data shortcuts, you can use the Data Shortcuts Manager dialog box to create references to data shortcuts, to repair broken data shortcuts, and to reference drawings to replace drawing objects with data shortcut references. You can also create folders for data shortcuts and move data shortcuts into those folders. To create data shortcut references in the Data Shortcuts Manager, 1. Click the Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, Manage Data Shortcuts. So that's the Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, and Manage Data Shortcuts. And so you can replace the items in here. In the Data Shortcuts tree, do one of the following. Right-click on objects or folders that contain the objects. Click Create Reference. Select the objects or folders that contain the objects and drag them from the Data Shortcut Manager into the drawing. Note: you can create multiple references at once by using the Shift, click, or Control click to select the data shortcuts. So you can drag it to the drawing. Huh. It's interesting. To create folders for data shortcuts and references in the Data Shortcuts Manager. 1. Click the Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, Manage Data Shortcuts. Do one of the following. In the Data Shortcuts tree, right-click an object or an existing folder and click Create Folder. In the drawing tree, I already did that. 3, in the Create New dialog box, enter a name for the new folder and click OK. Now you can drag and drop existing objects or folders that are within the same tree into the new folder. Note, when you create references to data shortcuts that are stored in subfolders, the subfolder structure is replicated in the consumer drawing. To repair broken data shortcuts. 1. Validate data shortcuts and synchronize the reference objects. Click the Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, Manage Data Shortcuts. In the Data Shortcut Manager dialog box, select Show the Only Broken Data Shortcuts checkbox. This filters the drawing objects tree to only show the data shortcuts that are broken. Broken data shortcuts are marked with a warning icon. Select a broken data shortcut. In the Data Shortcuts tree, select the data shortcut you want to link to. You can review the properties table below the Data Shortcuts tree and confirm that is the correct shortcut to link to. Click the Link to Data Shortcut. In the Drawing Objects tree, the selected item is changed to the name of the shortcut selected in the Data Shortcuts tree. In the Properties table under the Drawing Objects tree, the source file and path information is updated. So I don't have any broken ones, but it looks like it'd be like this one. You could down here, and then the data shortcuts here. So here are the drawing objects, and then here are the data shortcuts. So it's allowing you to take the drawing one information, compare it down here easily, and then fix the various items. So I guess that makes sense. To replace drawing objects with data shortcut references, validate data shortcuts and synchronize the reference objects. Click Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, Manage Data Shortcuts. In the Data Shortcuts Manager dialog box, ensure that Show Only Broken Data Shortcuts checkbox is cleared. In the Drawing Objects tree, select a drawing object that you want to replace with a data shortcut reference. In the Data Shortcuts tree, select the data shortcut you want to link to. You can review the properties table below the Data Shortcuts tree to confirm that is the correct shortcut linked to. Click Link to Data Shortcut. In the Drawing Objects tree, the selected item is changed to the name of the shortcut selected in the Data Shortcuts tree, and it is marked with a data shortcut icon. In the Properties table, under the Drawing Objects tree, the source file and path information is updated. To migrate data shortcuts, you can update data shortcuts to the current format or move them to a different folder. Use the standalone Data Shortcuts editor to save one or more data shortcuts to a specified folder. If the shortcuts were created with a previous version of Autodesk Civil 3D, they will be updated to the current format in this process. From a Windows desktop, click the Start menu and navigate to your list of programs. Open the Civil 3D 2021 folder and select the Data Shortcuts editor. In the Data Shortcuts Editor window, click File, Menu, Open, Data Shortcuts folder, and navigate to the Shortcuts folder that contains the data shortcuts you want to edit. This folder is typically inside a named project folder. In the Shortcut table, display the data shortcuts you want to migrate. Display all of them by clicking the Data Shortcut folder at the top of the tree, or display a subset by clicking an object type such as surfaces or alignments. Click File, Menu, Save As, then specify the folder where you want the data shortcuts to save the data shortcuts. Click OK to save and update the data shortcuts. To work with data shortcut references, note, data shortcuts must be created before references can be created. For more information, see To work with data shortcuts. To reference a data shortcut, after creating data shortcuts, you can create references to those data shortcuts in the active drawing, which is called the consumer drawing. Only one copy of a reference object can be imported into a consumer drawing. If a reference copy exists, the referencing menu option is not available. When you create references to data shortcuts that are stored in subfolders, the subfolder structure is replicated in the consumer drawing. Objects can be referenced only from the active project, which is listed in Toolspace on the Prospector tab. Tutorial exercise, referencing data shortcuts. Save the drawing into which you want to create the data shortcut references. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, expand the data shortcuts collection to find any objects you want to reference. Do one of the following. Right-click on the objects or folders that contain the objects, click Create Reference. Select the objects or folders that contain the objects and drag them from the Prospector tree into the drawing. You can create multiple references at once by using Shift-click or Control-click to select the data shortcuts. Keep saying that. So let's see if that's true. So in this drawing, I'm just going to create a bunch of alignments. And then I can save it. And then I can create a brand new drawing. I'm going to go to Active Drawing View. Come down here to my alignments. I forgot to create the data shortcuts. And so under centerline alignments, I have a bunch of here. It says I can click and drag them. And so now the 3 alignments should be up here. So that makes it nice and quick and easy. Cool. Note, you can also create references from the Data Shortcuts Manager dialog box. For more information about the behavior of surface references, see To work with surface references. For more information about the persistence of data reference geometry in drawing, see About Data Shortcuts. And so on the Manage tab, so here are my alignments. I can select all of them and then drag them over here. So I could right click. Nope, can't remove them. So it looks like you can drag and drop a bunch of them. So that's useful. To promote a reference, promote references to independent objects. A promoted reference becomes an independent object and is no longer automatically updated if the original source is edited. Note, corridor references cannot be promoted. That's unfortunate. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, expand the Data Shortcuts collection to see the data shortcut of interest. Right-click the reference object and then click Promote. You can also find Promote All underneath the data shortcuts. Promote all references in a drawing. Note, corridor references cannot be promoted. Oh, that's so sad. Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, Promote all data references. Should it say the dropdown? I think it should. So I'll just come down here. I think it should indicate it's in the drop down panel. To repair broken references, you can recover from minor changes such as a moved or renamed drawing. When a data shortcut reference is broken, the exclamation icon is displayed next to the invalid data shortcut in Toolspace on the Prospector tab for the host or consumer drawing. Broken references typically occur if a source drawing has been renamed or moved to a different folder. If you can identify the new name or location, it is quite easy to repair the references. If the source drawing contains multiple data shortcuts, once you identify the drawing, you are prompted to repair all of the references. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, right-click the object name of the broken reference and click Repair Broken References. In the Choose the File dialog box, navigate to the source drawing for the referenced object and click Open. If the source drawing contains other broken references, the Additional Broken References dialog box is displayed. You can click the Repair All Broken References button or click Cancel to repair only the broken reference you selected. To view the source drawing path and name, you view the full path to the source drawing for a data reference object. In Toolspace or on the Prospector tab, select the parent node for the object. For example, if the data reference object is a centerline alignment, click the centerline alignments. And so then the source location is in this location here. To access a data shortcut source drawing, open the source drawing for a data reference. This is useful if the source object requires editing. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, expand the data shortcuts collection to see the data shortcut of interest. Right-click on the data shortcut and click Open Source Drawing. The source drawing for the data shortcuts is displayed in a new document window. To work with surface references, there's a command setting that controls whether the geometry of the reference surfaces is saved in the drawing. Note, when you create references to objects other than surfaces, the geometry of those objects is always saved in the drawing. To specify the data reference status for the new surface references, in Toolspace, on the Settings tab, expand the Surface Commands collection. Double-click the Create Surface Reference to display the Edit Command Settings. Create Surface References dialog box. Expand the Create Surface Creation collection. For the Store Reference Surface in Drawing setting, specify one of the following options. Yes saves the geometry of surfaces in the drawing. The drawing will become larger, in some cases very much larger, but will open more quickly unless the source surface is changed. The reference surfaces will be visible even if the source drawings are not available. No does not save the geometry of the surface objects in the drawing. When set to No, the reference is checked every time the drawing is open. The drawing will be smaller but will open more slowly. Click OK. To change the data reference status of existing surface references. After you have inserted a reference to a surface data shortcut, you can change the manner in which the surface data reference is stored in the drawing. To change the surface reference status from Prospector, open the drawing that contains the surface reference. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, select the Surfaces collection. In the Toolspace list view, for the value in the data reference status column, specify one of the options. Geometry stored in drawing. Save the geometry of reference surfaces in the drawing. The drawing will become larger, but will open more quickly unless the source surface is changed. The reference surfaces will be visible even if the source drawings are not available. Reference only. Does not save the geometry of reference surfaces in the drawing. To change the surface reference status from the ribbon, open the drawing that contains the surface reference and select the surface reference in the drawing. On the Data Reference tab, click Modify Panel, Surface Properties dropdown, Convert DREF Status. Press Enter to change the data reference status. To synchronize a reference object. Synchronizing a data reference brings in any changes made to its source object. When a drawing contains references to data shortcuts, the data shortcut icon is displayed at the bottom right side of the drawing window. Data references are synchronized automatically when a drawing is opened. Otherwise, flags appear in the Prospector tree and the status bar of the drawing window when a reference object is out of date. When references become out of date with the data shortcuts, a message is displayed prompting you to synchronize the references. Click Synchronize to update the references. If you do not want these notifications to appear, you can click the icon at the bottom left of the drawing window to turn them off. When notifications are turned off, the icon appears as white instead of blue. To synchronize a reference object from Prospector, in the Prospector tree, the exclamation icon is displayed next to the reference objects that need to be synchronized. In Toolspace, on the Prospector tab, expand the drawing node. Expand the object collection, for example, surfaces. Right-click the out-of-date reference object, click Synchronize. To synchronize all references in the objects in the drawing, click the Manage tab, Data Shortcuts panel, Synchronize References. I always suggest to just do the ones that are out of date. If you do the Synchronize All method, either by doing it from the ribbon or hitting the Synchronize button, if you have lots of data references, it'll update all of them when you really just want one changed. About the Data Shortcuts Editor. Use the Data Shortcuts Editor for bulk options on Data Shortcuts. The Data Shortcuts Editor is a standalone application that you can use to edit multiple shortcut XML files safely and efficiently. For example, if you move an entire project from one working folder to another, you can use the Data Shortcuts Editor to update the paths to the data shortcut objects. In the Data Shortcut Editor, the data tree on the left shows all of the data shortcuts in the selected project folder. To select a different folder, click File menu, Open, Data Shortcuts folder. The table grid on the right shows the properties of each data shortcut. You can change the object name or path for each shortcut, and you can specify whether to use the handle, software ID, or name of the source object to create a match with the data shortcut. Precautions. Before editing data shortcuts, ensure that no one else is currently creating or editing the same set of data shortcuts within Autodesk Civil 3D. Good luck with that. Otherwise, one user can overwrite changes made by the other. Sure would be nice if there was a locking mechanism. Changes made in the Data Shortcut Editor window do not take effect until the shortcuts are reloaded. To reload the shortcuts, set the Data Shortcuts folder, or close Autodesk Civil 3D and restart it. Best practices. On the Edit menu in the Data Shortcuts Editor, use the Find and Replace command to quickly change text strings in the names of data shortcuts, paths, or source drawings. In the Shortcut table, set the Use to Match column to associate data shortcuts with their source objects by means of the source object's name or handle or both. The object handles is unique identifier used by the system. Users cannot change the handle, so it can be the most reliable matching attribute if an object names have changed. One situation in which you would match by name is if you delete an object and then recreate it and apply the same name. The new object has a different handle, but if you use the Match by Name option, the old data shortcut will automatically reference the new object. To access the Data Shortcut Editor, from the Windows desktop, click Start menu and navigate to your list of programs. Open the Autodesk Civil 3D 2021 folder and click Data Shortcuts Editor. The editor opens in a separate window. In the Data Shortcuts Editor window, click File, Menu, Open, Data Shortcuts folder, and navigate to the project folder that contains the data shortcuts you want to edit. The data shortcuts are displayed on the table grid. And this concludes Christopher Reads the Help Files Projects Data Shortcut Project.